I've lived on Lake Marlowe for nearly 15 years. Quiet, glassy water. Sunrise fishing. Sunday kayaking. It's not just a view, it's home. So when the new HOA board decided to fence off the only public lake access, without notice, my stomach dropped. I stood at the dead end where I used to launch my canoe. The boat ramp was now hidden behind a tall metal gate. Private property, HOA members only in bold red letters. The worst part? My house isn't part of the HOA. Never was. But they extended their jurisdiction down the road and claimed they were protecting the shoreline. Protecting it from who? Me. I built that wooden dock myself. Pulled beer cans and broken chairs out of the water every other weekend. I'd been taking care of this lake long before they showed up with their signs and bylaws. So when I confronted them, just asked why, I was met with crossed arms and tight smiles. Oh, it's nothing personal. The HOA president, Karen, no kidding, told me. It's just better for property values this way. Property values? I don't care about resale. I care about the herons that nest on the east bank. The bass that bite in the shallows near dusk. The sound of water lapping under my deck while I sip black coffee. But they didn't care. They saw me as some rogue homeowner outside their little empire. And when I tried to go around the gate, they filed a trespassing complaint on my lake. I'll admit, I was furious. I stopped waving at the neighbors. I stopped being polite, but I never expected what came next. That dry August, the heat settled in like a curse. Everything turned brittle. The lake dropped 2 feet, and one night the wind picked up. And then, flames. It started with a crackling pop around 2 a.m. I was up late on the porch, just watching the stars. Couldn't sleep. My mind still chewed on that locked gate. The way Karen smirked when I asked to access the shore. Then I smelled it. Sharp, smoky, unnatural. I stood up fast. My eyes scanned the horizon beyond the trees. Orange flicker. North end of the lake. Near the new homes. The ones the HOA board members built just last year. Within minutes, the whole sky turned red. I called 911. I sprinted to the edge of the fence they'd installed. Heart pounding. Watching as flames jumped from roof to roof like they knew who they were targeting. Panic sirens blared in the distance. People stumbled out of their houses in pajamas. Garden hoses flailed uselessly. Someone screamed Karen's name. But here's where it gets real. That fence, the one they used to block me from the lake, it now stood between the fire crews and the only direct water source for a half-mile. The firefighters had to detour around the neighborhood just to reach the lake. Lost crucial minutes, and by the time the hoses were in place, 2 homes were already gone. One of them? Karen's. She stood in the street barefoot. Mascara streaked down her cheeks, yelling at anyone who'd listen. She wanted someone to blame, but all I could think about was the irony. How the very barrier they used to cut me out ended up trapping them in. I didn't celebrate. I didn't gloat. I just stood there, staring at the flames, knowing deep down, this wasn't over yet. Because what the HOA didn't know was that I'd been preparing something of my own, and they weren't going to like it. The morning after the fire, I walked the edge of the lake with my boots crunching over blackened pine needles. Smoke still clung to the air like a bad memory. I passed the twisted remains of Karen's porch swing. Melted flower pots, scorched siding. Insurance adjusters were already poking through the wreckage like vultures, snapping photos, whispering. No one made eye contact with me, and I didn't need them to, because while they were busy counting damage, I was setting a plan in motion. See, what they didn't realize when they put up that fence is that they messed with the wrong outsider. I'm not just a homeowner. I'm a licensed land surveyor, retired, been drawing property lines for 30 years. And I knew that stretch of shoreline they claimed wasn't theirs to begin with. They built that gate across a public access easement, one that was recorded in county records long before the HOA even existed. But most folks don't dig through deeds and plats for fun. I do. So I took my binder of documents, copies of maps, aerial photos, all of it, straight to the county. Turns out, they'd filed 0 permits for the fence, 0 environmental assessments, no paperwork, no approvals. Just a bunch of board members flexing their power like a toy badge. The county clerk's face turned pale when I showed her everything. And that was just the beginning. Because the real kicker? I'd also found something buried in the original developer agreement. Something the HOA definitely hadn't read. If public access to the lake was ever obstructed without due process, the entire HOA could face dissolution. Their precious board? Their dues? Their power? One mistake away from being wiped off the map. So I hired a lawyer. And while the HOA scrambled to recover from the fire, they had no idea a legal fuse had already been lit under their feet. They burned my access. Now I was about to burn down everything they stood on. By the time the HOA realized what was happening, it was already too late. A county notice was posted, right on the gate they'd installed. Easement violation, removal required. Karen saw it first. I watched her from my porch, clutching a Starbucks cup like it might save her from collapse. Her mouth dropped open. She yanked the paper off the fence, read it 3 times, then stormed back up the road, stomping like a toddler denied dessert. I almost felt bad for her. Almost. See, while they were busy building their little kingdom of bylaws and backyard surveillance cameras, I was collecting receipts, testimonies from neighbors, drone footage showing the public trail they'd illegally blocked. Hell, I even had video of them pouring concrete for the fence on county land. The lawsuit hit their inboxes on a Tuesday. Cease and desist. Demand for restitution. Formal motion to dissolve the HOA due to breach of charter. I wish you could have seen their emergency meeting, held in someone's garage since the clubhouse had been damaged by smoke. Karen stood in front of folding chairs, voice cracking, trying to hold it together while neighbors shouted over her. How could you not check the easement? Why didn't we vote on this? My insurance just doubled because of that fire. It was chaos. Beautiful bureaucratic chaos. And I wasn't even done yet. Because while they fought amongst themselves, I was finalizing something far more permanent. I'd partnered with a local conservation group. They were looking to preserve lakeside access across the county. With my documentation, they could file for a permanent public right-of-way through the very land the HOA tried to seal off. Once approved, they wouldn't just have to tear down the gate. They'd have to allow anyone, fishermen, kayakers, hikers, to pass through freely forever. And that exclusive members-only shoreline? Gone. Karen thought she was locking me out, but she'd actually opened a door. A very, very public one. 2 weeks later, the trucks rolled in. Flatbeds, county workers, orange vests, bolt cutters. They didn't knock. They didn't ask. They just showed up, like clockwork, and started dismantling the fence. Piece by piece, Karen came running out of her house, phone in hand, screaming about private property and trespassing. The lead worker calmly pointed to the sign now staked in the dirt. Public easement. Access restored by county order. I was standing just down the road, coffee in hand. Same spot where I'd watched them build that illegal fence months before. Only this time, I smiled. They hauled off every post, every bolt. Even the HOA members' only sign she once proudly zip-tied to the gate. Gone. And then came the ripple effect. Neighbors started asking questions. Real ones. How much of their HOA dues had been wasted on this fence? Who authorized it? Why were insurance premiums skyrocketing? Why did Karen and her board act like they owned the lake? By the end of the month, 5 board members resigned, including Karen. Their last meeting? Completely empty chairs, save for one old man in the back reading a fishing magazine. But here's the kicker. The conservation group moved fast. With the evidence I provided, the county designated the shoreline as a protected public corridor. Not only was access restored, it was expanded. They built a walking trail, installed benches, put up a community rec. Now people stroll with dogs, fish with their kids, paddle at sunset. It's our lake again. Not the HOA's, not Karen's. Ours. And me? I rebuilt my dock, refinished it with new cedar planks, even added a little lantern post at the end that flickers on when the sun dips. Some nights, I sit out there and hear laughter echo across the water, the way it used to be, before the gates, before the greed, before the fire reminded everyone that no fence is permanent, and no one owns a view that was meant to be shared. But just when I thought the dust had finally settled, something strange happened. One evening late October, mist curling low across the lake. I noticed movement near the old fence line. A car, dark SUV, no plates, parked just off the trail where the county workers had removed the last concrete footing. A figure stepped out, hood up, clipboard in hand. They weren't from the county, no logo, no ID, but they moved like they belonged. Measured, intentional. I stayed hidden behind my porch post, watching as they walked the perimeter, taking photos, measuring distances, marking trees with little orange tape strips. The next morning, survey flags, everywhere, and not the kind I used back in my working days. These were fresh, commercial grade, and they were staked, not just near the easement, but creeping closer to my property line. I called the county office. They knew nothing. Then I called the conservation group. They were just as confused. So I did what I always do, dug. Turns out, a private developer had quietly purchased 2 lots next to the burned-down homes. Cash sale, no public notice yet. Shell Corporation. One that traced back to a holding firm, owned by Karen's brother. She'd vanished after resigning, moved 2 towns over. But now, it looked like she was coming back, just behind the scenes. And worse, the documents I found showed they were proposing a private marina for future community development. That would mean new fences, gated access, piers built over the shoreline, the public shoreline I fought to protect. It wasn't over. It was just shifting shape. They couldn't beat me with the HOA, so now they were trying something else. But I wasn't the same quiet homeowner anymore. I had allies now. Legal contacts. Land use experts. A whole community that had tasted what it meant to truly share the lake. And if they thought I'd let them steal that piece away again, they were about to learn. I fight smarter the second time around. I didn't wait this time. No warnings. No polite emails. No second chances. The moment I confirmed the shell company's intent to privatize the shoreline, I filed for an injunction. This time with dozens of signatures behind me, fishermen, hikers, birdwatchers, even some of the very neighbors who once backed the HOA. Turns out, watching fire consume your cul-de-sac changes your perspective on what matters. The county held an emergency zoning hearing, and I showed up ready. Blueprints, ownership records, environmental impact reports. A thick binder labeled Exhibit A slapped onto the table like a thunderclap. But I didn't just bring paperwork. I brought people. Elderly couples who watched the sunrise from that lake every morning. Kids who'd learned to swim there. Veterans who found peace casting a line into quiet waters. We stood as one. Told them the truth. That this lake wasn't just a body of water. It was memory. And healing. And freedom. When the final vote came down, unanimous. Permit denied. Project halted. The easement reinforced with permanent zoning protection. In perpetuity. That means forever. No more fences. No more Karen proxies. No more threats to what never should have been taken away. I still walk that trail every evening. I nod to familiar faces. I watch the water shift gold under a setting sky. And sometimes, I hear the low hum of boats. The laughter of strangers enjoying what once almost slipped into shadow. The dock creaks beneath me as I sit. Same view, same lake. But something's different now. It's stronger. So am I. Because when people try to gatekeep nature, when they weaponize rules to box others out, they always forget one thing. You can't own the horizon. You can only protect it. And I'll keep doing that. Every single day.